When you're very young, I think you have the ability and the creativity and the imagination to just make life work. You can entertain yourself with a pebble as you're walking around the lake for 2 hours. We used to take our kids to some park, and every second they would bend over and pick up something. That would entertain them for 5 hours. Now, where do you want to go? I don't care. What do you want to eat? I don't care. Is there a movie you'd like to watch? Doesn't really matter. It's like being alive, being dead, nothing really matters. And as you get older, it's really difficult to find things that are interesting. First, because you're civilized by your parents, you're civilized in school, you're civilized at your work, you're civilized by society. And the way all these environments impose themselves upon you, after a while you really don't have much to sing, you don't really have much places to go. And you realize whether you read this book or that book, you go out with this person or that person, in the end they're all the same. So after a while you just become indifferent. Until something touches you. I'll tell you a story, and forgive me for the self-indulgence. One of the problems with trying to be reflective, one of the problems with being objective, being rational, after, of course, going through some intoxication, in other words, being consumed by emotions and passions, one of the ways you can see things clearly is by not allowing your feelings to contaminate it. In other words, if I want to understand what death is, I have to look at my father when I go see him. He's 90. He can go at any time. So I can either look at him and get teary-eyed and kind of lose control and act like an idiot, or I can sit back and say, this is a man who came here at the age of 50 as an immigrant, washed cars for about 20 years. He's not 90, his body is weak, his mind is feeble, and it's very natural for people from this age on to kind of just slowly go into the good night. When you approach life in such a detached way, what you realize after a while is that you begin to lose the ability to feel. It becomes an addiction. You only want to understand, but you only want to understand after many years of feeling. It's like you have a trauma that's been haunting you for the past 20 years, and after a while you say, I am so tired of having my emotions push me around. It messes up my classroom environment, it messes up my relationships, it messes up me. I'm just tired. And then you go to a therapist office. And what the therapist will try to do is kind of like a butcher that separates the meat from the fat or the meat from the skin. What the butcher tries to do is separate your emotions from the event. And once your emotions are gone, now a different part of you comes out and says, okay, let me look at this event. What the hell is this all about? And like a good scientist, you take this rat, cut it in half, and you look inside it. And then you slowly begin to understand. So that has been my life for the past maybe 30, 40 years. And many moments I had imagined that I really have lost the ability to have any emotions towards anything, because I have, for the most of my life, I've tried to understand things, not so much as be consumed by emotions. That's just silly, after a while, for me at least. Then I remember someone calling me saying, Amir, your teacher has cancer. I immediately pick up the phone, call Hussein. I heard what's going on, is there something I can do for you? And he said, yeah, I get lost. He didn't, but I said, why don't I make food for you? I'll make it in Oakland, drive to Sacramento, just give it to you and then come back. It's not a problem. I still didn't much care about him passing, because still was alive. I could hear his voice and go to his house and just see how he was doing once in a while. Then my sister called and said, Hussein died. And it was just a couple years ago. And I remember going to my study, getting on the floor in like a fetal position and just crying. Because who I am today is really because of him. And it's what I tell my students all the time. Those who did go to school because of my classes, got their PhDs, are now teaching, they have family lives, they're doing really, really good despite being kind of depressed for a long time. I always tell them, if you think that you've accomplished anything in your life, it's because of not so much me, but because of Hussein. And so for the first time in many years, I realized that I actually do have the capacity to get really, really emotional, and in fact tear up and cry like a little kid. I haven't lost that ability, but I do that only for things I really, really care about. And so a good portion of life that takes place around me, I am indifferent towards. If my kid comes to me and says, I got an F on the essay, I'm going to start crying, I don't really care. Because I know that it's going to take them about 20, 30 years to figure things out, if they're mentally and psychologically healthy. If they come to me and say, oh, Dad, my boyfriend left me, these are not things that worry me.